Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast presented by Full Press Coverage. Man, did we have a long but necessary conversation yesterday, Sap, as the Celtics surprised pretty much everybody, not just inside or outside NBA circles, but inside NBA circles as well. As Danny Ainge is out and Brad Stevens is going to replace him as the president of basketball operations for the Boston Celtics. And now the Celtics need a new head coach. Again, we talked about for a long time yesterday, but Sap, I still have some lingering thoughts because it is about the Celtics, and that's how I spend most of my day thinking, okay, what's going to be good or bad for the Celtics? I have a sickness. Clearly, I think that's how you are with LeBron, right? You're just thinking about
Not
what's
quite that,
right.
Jed. Not 24/7 thinking about LeBron. Let's hope not. That would be somewhat scary. Maybe you need another hobby or
Yes.
something else to do besides sit at your palatial desk and decide what you are going to do with the Boston Celtics. Because just to let you know, Jet, you're not the general manager yet. Maybe you will be, because Brad Stevens, maybe in a year he's coaching elsewhere, and there'll be some new people they want to bring on board, and I'll give you a letter of recommendation. You can't do any worse than Danny Ainge did the last 2 years.
I appreciate the letter of recommendation. I do think I would do a great job. I don't think I'm going to get the job,
No,
unfortunately. I also think I've said way too many mean things about the ownership group now for them to ever
true,
want to hire
true.
me. So that ship may have sailed. But since we talked about for like an hour and a half yesterday, we hit on pretty much every point I wanted to get to, except for I was thinking about this more and more, and it was frustrating me more and more last night. And I texted you about this late night, Sap, as we were watching the Mavericks game, I believe.
Hmm.
I think the Celtics really, really did themselves a disservice not opening, at least giving the appearance of opening this up to a wider search for
Hmm.
the next president of basketball operations. The fact that it looks like it was a backroom deal and done seemingly with haste, and they didn't even really look at other candidates. Certainly, they didn't interview any other candidates that we know about. If they did, it was only internal candidates. Uh, and that they didn't look at a person of color. After all this conversation the past week was swirling around Boston and racism, and we know the Celtics have a great track record historically with this, but still the narrative is Boston racist. And the Celtics, I think, could have done themselves a huge favor in really looking at minority candidates here and instead did the opposite for themselves, like I just said, a disservice by just promoting the white head coach who has no front office experience. I saw Stephen A. Smith was upset about this, but not so much about Brad Stevens getting the job, but that black players aren't advocating as much for black executives, and that he said, black head coaches never get this opportunity to be elevated from their position to this position. So I think the Celtics really shot themselves in the foot. And I'm just, do they even have a PR team there, or like people talking to ownership being like, hey, this might be a bad look? I'm just so confused as to why or how they made this decision. It just doesn't make sense to me 24 hours later.
To me, it was just a way to save money. Again, Brad Stevens is owed 6 years, in excess of $40 million. If you fire him yesterday, you owe him that money. Now, if he goes and signs with another team, there is offset language, so who knows what's going to happen in terms of dollars and cents, but it's still going to cost the Boston Celtics a big chunk of change. And I think this ownership's gotten a little bit tighter with the dollars, some out of necessity because, quite frankly, the dollars are not coming in the last year and a half because of the pandemic. So you don't have people in the stands until just the last home game against the Brooklyn Nets, and the Celtics aren't playing again at TD Garden till the fall. So there's not that money coming in. So one way to save some money is we're just going to promote the coach, quote unquote, promote the coach who we think failed, because he's really a coach. I don't think of Brad Stevens as an executive. He's a coach. I picture him with the whistle on his neck, X's and O's, and all of that stuff. So now we're going to promote him to president of basketball operations because we're going to have to pay him anyway. So that's, I think, what the message sends from Wyc Grousbeck to Celtic Nation. And that's the biggest reason they just did that. Sure, they should have had some sort of search here to look at potential candidates. We mentioned Chauncey Billups not not just as a coach, but potentially as a president of basketball operations. The Cleveland Cavaliers, kicked the tires on Chauncey Billups. In fact, I thought it was a done deal a few years ago and it fell through. But why not look at someone like Chauncey Billups? Or you mentioned Grant Hill, someone that you're a big fan of, potentially being that guy. Although now he's going to be running USA Basketball, and
That's
he's
why I
probably
wanted
got his
him to
time. But
be.
you do like Grant Hill quite a bit. But someone like that who's so well respected, yeah, I mean that would have made a lot of sense. But they weren't firing Brad Stevens and giving him a $42 million check out the door. That just wasn't going to happen. So Jeff Goodman was on local radio earlier today, and Jeff Goodman, who works for a stadium, is really plugged in with Brad Stevens. He's close to him. He puts the over and under 18 months that in less than 18 months, Brad Stevens will be gone. That there's going to be a team out there that wants him as their coach in the NBA. He's not going back to college because it's much more difficult to coach in college than it is in the NBA because of the one and dones and the transfer portal. It's really, really difficult to the point where all-time great coaches are hanging it up, albeit older coaches like Mike Krzyzewski. So I don't think Brad Stevens wants to go back to college. He wants to remain in the NBA, and he's good enough, obviously, to coach one of the 30 franchises in the NBA without question. And Jeff Goodman, again, who's very plugged in with Brad Stevens, feels that Stevens, within the next 18 months, which would lead you to believe next offseason, is going to be going elsewhere to coach a team. And at that point, the Celtics may be able to recoup a first or a second round draft pick, and then they'll be off the hook for all of that money. I think that's what's going to happen. And then a year from now, we're revisiting the situation saying, okay, who's going to be the next president of basketball operations? And I hope it's not Mike Zarin or Austin Ainge or someone who's already in the front office. I'd like to see a fresh set of eyes. And again, you hope that they go into the Black community and find that person. I hope that in the meantime, their next head coach is a former Black player. And again, we're all on board with Chauncey Billups or Sam Cassell. Those are the two leading candidates coming from us. And I think those are two of the leading candidates according to Las Vegas. So they tend to know things. So that would be great. That'd be a step in the right direction if it's Sam Cassell or Chauncey Billups. And then maybe they're revisiting the president of basketball operations a year from now. This was just a way to save money for the Celtics. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah, I mean, the more you're saying it, the more I'm believing it's Sap. And I mean, how can they not hire a Black head coach at this point? It
Right.
would be such a bad look if they just were like, okay, Kenny Atkinson, come on in.
Right.
It just, they can't do it. And so, by not even giving the appearance of a search and just elevating Brad Stevens, they've essentially forced their hand into hiring a Black coach here, which
Yep.
obviously I think is it's a good thing. But I would like to see them be more willing to have looked outside. And the fact that Jeff Goodman's saying that he's basically a placeholder GM.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just turning the team into just they look like they're horribly run right now.
Yep.
Probably because they are horribly run right now, and they're going to lose Jason Tatum. They're just going to lose him outright because this is no way to run a team. Why would you want to be here if you're constantly changing who's running the front office and you don't have a concrete vision and ownership is cheap? Why would you want to be here?
Yeah, because Jason Tatum becomes really the most important person in this organization. He's your best player. He's young. You have him signed for 3 more years, and you would think he can recruit players to come here. That's probably not going to happen. We know Bradley Beal, he'll be up in 2 years with the Wizards, and he, after the loss last night where they were eliminated by the 76ers, didn't seem all that committed to staying in Washington. So maybe you explore that. But to get Bradley Beal, you're going to have to part with Jaylen Brown. Is that really a lateral move? Maybe Bradley Beal is slightly better than Jaylen Brown, and that really excites Jason Tatum to play with his best friend in the NBA. Again, Bradley Beal hasn't won anything. It's like when everybody brings up Karl Anthony Towns, it's like, great, what did Karl Anthony Towns ever do in Minnesota? And again, if he's playing with Jason Tatum, in theory, he's playing with a player who's better than he's ever played with in Minnesota. I get that. But yeah, you're going to need Jason Tatum to be a chief recruiter as much as anything, who can sell the city of Boston and the Celtics organization as a place to come, flourish, win a championship. And right now, I don't think, unless he's lying, he's going to be able to do that. And I said this yesterday, Jet. Kyrie Irving in his 2 years here and the 2 years since he left has done more damage to this franchise than anything that happened since the deaths of Len Bias and Reggie Lewis. And I truly believe that. I'm not trying to be bombastic or hyperbolic. Kyrie Irving, before he got here and since, really terrified this organization. not just his performance on the court in, say, game 4 and game
No, he,
5
he
of
took a
that series.
blowtorch to the whole
He's
organization,
he
Seth. You're
most
right.
certainly did. I mean, the 2 years here, whether he got in the head of Jason Tatum, maybe it poisoned him a little bit, or other players just left. No one wants to come here. He's doing a troll job against the Boston Celtics. So I put out on Twitter yesterday, because someone put out a little tweet saying, who should be the next Celtics head coach? Wrong answers only. I said, why not Kyrie Irving? He already owns the team. Let him coach it.
Yeah, I mean, this is really a dark times for the Celtics, and it's hard to imagine with two young star level players that it's so bleak. But uh, when the top of the organization doesn't seem like they have their shit together,
Mhm.
that's a huge problem. I mean, that's the problem that they've experienced in New York for 30 years now. I'm not saying that Wick Grousbeck and Steve Paliuka are James Dolan,
No,
because that's a whole other level of insanity. But this just the way they did this just rubs me the wrong way. Whether it's for monetary reasons, like you said, whether it's just like the save face because they didn't want to look like they're completely cleaning house, and that they made a wrong decision giving Brad Stevens an extension after the bubble last year, which obviously they did. I don't think anybody thinks now almost a year later that was a smart move to extend him. And all the praise they heaped on Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge during the season, as it was increasingly obvious that Ainge wasn't doing his job well and Brad Stevens had lost the players. The ownership group looks foolish. And the fact that they did not have any sort of expansive search for the most important position on the team really rubs me the wrong way. And then I see that there's an article yesterday, I think in the Ringer, by Kevin O'Connor, where he
Mhm.
floated that they could have had Sam Presti potentially, and he would have been potentially let out of his contract in Oklahoma City, because they're always
Mhm.
looking to save money there. Um, and Sam Presti is from here, started in the Celtics organization. I think he's one of, if not the best general managers in basketball. And the Celtics had seemingly no interest or didn't even reach out. I just don't. I don't understand it. What about Brad Stevens makes him such an intriguing candidate for this position, other than we don't have to, cut him a check?
That's the biggest reason, right? I mean, I think the worst contract on the Celtics, hell, the most damaging contract in all of the NBA is Kemba Walker's contract. But
Yeah, very well, maybe.
the second worst contract within the Celtics organization is Brad Stevens right now, because he was extended as a coach. I mean, that's what he is. And now you're saying, well, he's not going to be able to coach this team, but we don't want to cut him a $42 million check. If you do that and you show Brad Stevens the door and have to pay him $42 million, and then you bring in Sam Presti, you're going to have to pay him in the $6 to $7 million range. Now you're paying 12 to $15 million for your president of basketball operations. And again, they're tightening the belt there because the pandemic did some damage to pretty much every team in the NBA, right? I mean, they're obviously doing well with the national TV rights, which is a little bit shaky because ratings are down. Um, and the whole bubble experience was something that I think basketball junkies enjoyed watching, but not the casual fan, because it was off calendar, right? Like who the hell
Yeah.
watches the NBA finals in October when you've got the NFL and college football and the World Series taking place? So I mean, the sport is in a really good place, but I think in terms of like the finances of the NBA for the next year or two a bit shaky. And I think Rick Grossbeck, I don't know how much money he has and his investors have. We just assume that every guy that owns a sports franchise had unlimited money. We see what happened in Houston with Tillman Fertitta, who took a bath during the pandemic because he's in the entertainment service industry, which basically shut down for a year. So I think that weighs into this also. I mean, they're rich. They're all rich, but there are different levels of being rich. And maybe the Celtics just have to tighten the belt. And that's the reason behind saying to Brad Stevens, we're paying you, so here's your new job. And hopefully, if he doesn't do a good job, which you kind of do, you want him to do a good job and be stuck with him? That's a real catch-22 situation. But if he's not, then someone will hire him as a coach, and then you're off the hook of that money that you owe him. Again, there'll be that offset language that gets involved somehow. But yeah, that I think what could happen, and I'm just basing this off earlier reports.
Yeah, and I just think two things. One, I don't think it's ever going to be acceptable amongst fans, especially fans in Boston, to say, well, the pandemic hurt them financially, they're going to tighten the
True.
belt. People, it's just, the optics are terrible. Nobody's going to buy it. Listen, especially after an offseason where the Patriots just spent a ton of money. They were impacted by the pandemic. The Bruins went out and got Taylor Hall. I don't know what the cap ramifications were, but the optics were good. Okay, they're going
Mhm.
for it. They're loading up.
Yep.
And the Red Sox obviously have been kind of cost cutting, but they also have the second highest payroll in Major League Baseball. So you can't really accuse them of cheaping out.
And the Celtics, of the four major sports teams, have had the least success over the last
By
15
far.
years, 20 years. I mean, obviously, the Patriots have 6 Super Bowl championships. The Red Sox have 4 World Series. The Bruins and Celtics each have 1 championship. The Bruins came more recently in 2011 opposed to 2008. And at least the Bruins have gone back to a couple of cup finals in
Yeah, they have 3.
13 and last year. Yeah, they've been to 3 finals. You've been to 2, none since 2010. And you had this well-publicized rebuild. And like I said, in the summer of 2018, most people agree that at some point the Celtics would win a championship over the next 3 years. LeBron had moved to the Western Conference. You looked like you were going to be the dominant team in the East. You had all these great pieces, and now they're all gone. You have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and the coach of that team is now the president of basketball operations. It's like if you were Rip Van Winkle and fell asleep in the summer of 2018 and woke up now, you'd say, what the hell happened to that franchise? And whoever was in charge of it did a real poor job.
Yeah. So the last point I want to make on it, Sap, is this. And it's kind of rehashing what I've been saying. What qualifies Brad Stevens for this job, especially to the point
keep
where
asking that question. That's not one that can be
But they keep
answered
saying
because
this is what they keep saying, Sap. He's a smart basketball guy.
well,
you know
you're
what?
believing them,
I'm a smart basketball guy too,
but
honestly.
you're believing them though. So don't believe them. Be cynical like I am. As you get older, you get more
No,
cynical.
I think you're dead on, Sap.
It's all about money.
You're
So
the only
they're gonna
person I've
sell that.
heard talking about this too. Why haven't I been hearing this on the radio or on national coverage about
Maybe
it?
because I'm a deep thinker, Jet. Maybe that's what it is. I'm just naturally cynical. I've also, not that I own a basketball team, but I've owned businesses, and I understand how some things get painted a certain way, and you're like, man, I'm not paying this guy to go coach somewhere else or to go play golf for 6 years. I mean, if they fired him, Brad Stevens could go join the PGA Tour if he wanted to. Apparently, Danny Ainge may join the senior tour for all we know, and actually probably could pull off playing on the senior tour and running a team because it was apparent that he liked to golf while I was here, which it was kind of strange that when he said now I can golf more, and Wick Grossbeck threw a little snide remark at the press conference, goes, well, you've been doing that anyways. I don't think that should be taken lightly. I think there's some resentment there, and I think it goes back to that conversation that he had last week on 98.5 The Sports Hub. Here's the face of your franchise, the guy who runs your franchise. He's doing a weekly hit. Have the common courtesy of doing it on a hard line, an ISDN line, or through Zoom. And you know what? Book your tee time a little bit later. I mean, maybe I'm being an old fart here. Maybe because I disdain golf, that like if someone's golfing over doing something they're supposed to, I kind of lose it at some point. But that to me was someone who was completely aloof, out of touch. And then when he responded to the question about race with, I haven't heard anything in 26 years here. Again, 7 months after one of your best players posted on the Players Tribune about racial problems that he confronted while playing in Boston recently. That to me was just tone deaf. And I think that may have led to Wick Grossbeck saying, let's move on. And again, because everyone's saying, oh, this has been in the works for months. Well, why did anybody report this? I love when everyone comes out after the fact and goes, oh yeah, this is not a surprise. It's been in the works. Well, do your damn job and report it. The only person who really touched on this back months ago was Jackie McMullen, who's one of the best in the business. She was on a podcast with Bill Simmons and kind of alluded to that. Right. So maybe Jackie knew something and she kind of gave us a little information. The rest of them are saying, oh, yeah, this was in the works. We knew. And at that point, I don't believe them at all, because I don't think the Celtics are the most incestuous organization in the city. And I think the media that covers them is in bed with them for the most part.
Oh, completely they are.
More than any other.
Now you're hearing, rumors of, well, maybe he's not done. It's not really retiring. Maybe he's going to go join the Utah Jazz. Well, if I'm the Jazz, I think if I'm the GM there, I've done a pretty damn good job We were the
Right.
1 seed this year. Do we really need to bring in Danny Ainge, who's kind of screwed things up in Boston? Like, why
And
are they rushing out to get Danny Ainge?
And is Ainge going to be a number 2 guy in Utah, like
No,
a
hell no.
consultant? You know what I'm saying? He's going to be the guy. This is like, I mean, he's not anywhere in the same league of, say, Jerry West or Pat Riley. Those are 2 of the greatest executives in the history of the sport. But, here comes Danny Ainge back to Utah, where, by the way, he is a god. Is he going to be like a consultant? That's never good. And maybe in Portland because he's from Oregon originally. Well, those 2 teams are still playing. And who the hell is he recruiting as a leader of an organization? Like I said, Pat Riley is in that exalted position with the Miami Heat. Pat Riley can recruit because Pat Riley is perceived as a cool guy, even though he's 75. The hair, the suits, the tan. He's called the Dawn. That's his nickname, the Dawn. So
Right,
people,
but Seth,
players respect him. Danny Ainge doesn't appear cool to me. He seems like a 62-year-old white guy that wants to golf. That's
it
exciting.
isn't that like why another reason why maybe they should have considered or hired a player of color? If you have,
Hmm.
say, if you had an
Yes.
executive, the guy running organization is a person of color and the head
Yep.
coach is a person of color, so then you're like becoming more of a black run organization
Right.
in a predominantly black league. Isn't that maybe appealing to some black players?
Sure.
I'm
Provided
just,
those
I
guys,
mean,
are qualified. We don't want to just
of
take
course, of course, but I think
player X and
Chauncey Billups
Chauncey
is just
Billups.
as qualified as Brett Stevens to do this.
I think Chauncey Billups, whenever he becomes a head coach, and it's whenever, not if, is going to be outstanding at it. You could just tell certain guys are going to be really good at it. Joe Dumars was good as an executive. Obviously, would like to have the second pick back in the 2003 draft. You could have taken Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, or Chris Bosh.
Yeah, it sunk
Um,
his career there
it
as an
really did. If
executive.
they had, I mean, imagine if Detroit had won that draft lottery and got LeBron, like how long that run would have been. So that did sink his career, but he did win a championship there. And Joe Dumars was a good executive in the NBA. And I think of Billups and Dumars as somewhat similar players, just really tough leaders, clutch guys, just
Yeah,
very,
but and
very similar.
you're saying qualified, but then when the Celtics hire Brad Stevens for it, then qualifications get thrown out the window. The
Right.
qualification
You're
is
right.
you had something tangentially to do with the NBA. Any ex-player would be equally as qualified in my
Right.
mind to run
Sure.
basketball ops as Brad Stevens is.
Oh yeah, without question. Like Chauncey Billups would be my choice.
What
Masai
about
Ujiri
Kevin
would be.
Ollie? Throw out a
Kevin
guy.
Ollie's a guy for some reason isn't coaching in the NBA. I have no clue why that is. I think there may have been some personal issues. I'm not sure. I always maintain that Kevin Ollie was going to coach Kevin Durant at some point. I'm surprised the Nets didn't hire Kevin Ollie because Kevin Ollie had a great relationship with the big three that was in Oklahoma City back, 9 years ago when they were all babies and they got to the NBA Finals in 2012. Durant, Westbrook, and Harden loved Kevin Ollie. The guy won a championship at Connecticut and a national championship in 2014. It just seemed like Kevin Ollie was going to step in and be a great coach, but I don't know what happened there. And it does kind of go back to the fact, Jet, that black guys don't get second chances. White guys do. We see that all the time.
Well, look at
Right? I mean,
look even in
I get
Brooklyn,
Doc
Seth.
Rivers. Doc Rivers is on his 14, but he's been good everywhere he's coached. And he's
Yeah,
Doc Rivers. Doc has a different skill set than just about anyone else because Doc commands a room, right? I mean, like Doc's a guy who, if he walks into the room, he's the focal point. He's just got that type of personality, always has.
but like, look, okay, so like, look what happened in Brooklyn. They fired Kenny Atkinson last
Yep.
year. Jacques Vaughn became the head coach. He did a pretty good job. They still made the playoffs, and the players liked him and stuff. And then had experience, and then they hired Steve Nash, who had never coached a game.
Right. Who
Uh,
still looks like he doesn't. Well, that's maybe the case still with Steve Nash.
So
I'm not sure if
experience,
he's
I don't think
ever coached a game. No,
matters to teams.
no. He was a great player. He brought along Mike D'Antoni, who has had a career where I think eventually he'll end up in the Hall of Fame because his offense is unique and he's had a lot of regular season success, but no
Yeah, he's got a
postseason
lot of
success.
wins.
Got a lot of wins, and it's a style that I think the league uses more and more. So he's been impactful in that sense. I think they may have brought Nash in because he did have a connection with Kevin Durant when they were both at Golden State. Nash was kind of some sort of consultant with Golden State. So I think he had a good relationship with Kevin Durant, and then bringing D'Antoni in, maybe they were thinking so far ahead that, look, James Harden's going to bail on Houston and this could be a draw
Right.
to bring James Harden to Brooklyn. Besides Kyrie and Durant, another reason I think that Harden has flourished and was interested in going to Brooklyn was Mike D'Antoni. He had great years with him as his coach. I mean, James Harden became a great player under Mike D'Antoni. Now,
Yeah.
he would have become a great player under anyone, but he did flourish under D'Antoni more so than, say, Kevin McHale, who he didn't necessarily respect. Yeah, no, I mean, sign me up for Masai Ujiri, but obviously that ship has sailed unless a year from now Brad Stevens is the head coach of the Indiana Pacers. Then Wick Grossbeck opens up the checkbook and offers Masai Ujiri, I don't know, $15 million a year to run basketball operations. I think he'd be
So what
worth
do we need
every
to do?
penny.
A GoFundMe for the Celtics? I mean, this
That
is
could be the
ridiculous.
case. Yes. No, it is. I'm telling you, the rich guys, they don't like to spend money unless they're making money, right? So, like, does he want to go into the red? No, probably not. Then this is how they think. It's not everybody's Mark Cuban, who, and I don't even think Mark Cuban has endless funds. And look, as great as an owner Mark Cuban is, and I think he's a great owner, who exactly have they brought in as a free agent? I mean, they're going to spend the next 5 years trying to figure out to get a true number two for Luka. They have
Right.
their franchise player, but can they go get a second piece to put them over the top? And as great as Cuban is, he really never even did that with Dirk Nowitzki. I mean, they had Steve Nash, but then Nash really flourished in Phoenix
Right.
later
It
on.
wasn't the same Steve
No,
Nash.
no, it was
All right.
again Mike D'Antoni, who as much as we like to make fun of him, and Steve Nash won 2 MVPs, James Harden won an MVP. He obviously can coach offense.
Yeah. Oh, big time. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's one of the great offensive coaches, but
yeah.
that's different in the postseason. So,
Mhm.
all right, that I'm sure we're gonna keep talking about this, as more and more comes out. But there was some lingering issues that we wanted to talk about. Sap, let's get into some series wrapped up last night. Before
Yep.
we are going to talk about your Lakers today, I am going to force you to do
Really?
it.
Okay.
So last night the 76ers put things to bed as without Joel Embiid, they're able to take down the Wizards. Your guy Ben Simmons had a very nice game for himself. He shot over 50% from the free throw line, which was very impressive for him. He managed to
Round
do
of
it.
applause for my man.
Very good, Ben Simmons. I think in a series that really shocked the hell out of everybody, the Hawks just dominated the Knicks. They win that thing 4-1. And Trae Young is emerging as, well, not just a superstar in this league, but a guy that New York fans are really going to hate for the next decade. Like he's like their new Reggie Miller.
He is. But you know what? I think it's fun in New York. Like it became a respect thing with the Knicks fans and Reggie Miller, right? It doesn't become hateful. It becomes kind of a really interesting narrative, and I think that's going to happen with Trae Young. I picked Atlanta to win the series. I didn't think it would go in 5 games. Look, the Knicks all year played hard, well coached. That doesn't always translate to the postseason. Playing hard is great during the regular season when teams and players are taking time off and you're really invested and you can win half your games by just outworking teams and out hustling teams in the regular season. You get to a playoff matchup, it's all about matchups and talent. And Trae Young was the best player on the court. I think Atlanta's roster is better than the Knicks roster. And Trae Young, look, he can't quite shoot like Steph Curry, but then again, no one can. But I tell you, he's a better passer than Steph Curry, and he's really developing into a star who likes the big stage. Took a bow when he hit his final three last night, which was perfect for Broadway.
I think also, Sap, we talk about the certain players that they don't like to be the man in the black hat and the guy that gets booed. I think he likes it. I think he
does.
really relishes shutting up fans and
Yep.
who are booing. And, I think he really likes going in and hitting shots, dagger shots. I've always really liked Trae Young. We did, I think 2 months ago, they had like an NBA list of the best players under 25 or something like that. And we both agreed Trae Young was ranked criminally low on that.
Yeah.
He was like ranked like 18 or something like that. And I think we both said it. This is ridiculous.
This
He's
is insane.
going to lead the league in scoring and assists at some point in his career. And
he might be the first. He might be the first person since Tiny Archibald to pull that off, lead the league in points and assists in the same year. That's pretty impressive. I mean, if you're a 30-10 guy,
he's got the skill set to do it.
He certainly does. He's a liability on defense, as is Luka Doncic. But you know what? So what? I mean, when you're that good offensively, you can deal with that. Steph Curry, the same thing. I mean, the truly transformational players, Jordan, LeBron, the reason they are that because of the defensive end.
Yeah,
they can beat you on 94 feet. But on the offensive end, I mean that 2018 draft, right? You got Luka went third, and Trae Young with fifth, and DeAndre Ayton, who's had a really nice postseason. He's been tough for the Lakers to deal with. He went first. That's turning out to be a pretty damn good draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if the Mavericks, we'll talk about them in a second, do get bounced in this round here, I think most everybody agrees Luka's a better player than Trae Young, but I think Trae Young takes that personally, and I think it's not the gigantic gap as maybe some people were thinking. It worked well for both teams. I
Yeah,
think
it
that
did.
Trae Young is perfect for Atlanta, and I think that
Yep.
Luka Doncic is perfect for Dallas. So I'm not gonna bag on Atlanta for making that trade. I don't think it was that horrible for them because I don't know that Doncic would be the same type of player in Atlanta.
No, he's in Dallas. He's kind of like the heir apparent to Dirk Nowitzki.
Yeah,
And by the way, Luca has a better skill set than Dirk. I mean, if Luca does what I think he can do over the next 15 years, he's got a shot of being a top 12, 15 player. I mean, he's got that type of skill set, right? I mean, he's already essentially a 30-10-10 guy. What do you have the other last night? 42 points, 14 assists,
yeah,
and
he's
8
going up
rebounds
the guy who I think is the
against.
best defensive player in the league.
Yeah, and
Typically,
he's
is quite
he's
he's torturing
dominating.
him. Yeah,
Jet, he's played 11 postseason games in his career. He already has 4 40-point games. Now, he took 37 shots last night. I don't have a problem when your best player takes 37 shots. He had 17. That's 46%. I'll live with that, especially when a lot of them are threes and difficult shots.
and
I
look at
have
the
no
rest of that
problem with that.
roster too. Who do you really want
Oh,
taking shots?
not very good. I mean, that's why I want to see my guy LeBron tonight. If he has to take 37 shots to keep the Lakers season alive, go ahead, LeBron. I have no problem with that. You don't always have to make the right basketball play, which is what LeBron has done for 18 years. Luka has a lot of that in him, but he's got a little bit more of the gunslinger mentality. He does kind of wear down in the fourth quarter because I still don't think he's committed to conditioning. He's 22 years old. I mean,
Right.
just think if he starts to get that part of his game where the offseason about getting in great shape and continuing to grow his game, man, this kid is special. Just think the Celtics again. Sometimes luck didn't go their way. 2016 third pick, Jaylen Brown, excellent pick. 2017, Jason Tatum, great pick. The next year, the third pick was Dallas. Just imagine if the Celtics could have had the third pick that year instead of the other ones. I mean, this is all just playing with,
Yeah.
what ifs. But there were rumors that the Celtics were interested in the third pick because they're interested in everything and would have taken Jaylen Brown, who had already played 2 years. So it would have been Jaylen Brown to Dallas for the third pick and whatever other mechanisms would have been involved. Much as we love Jaylen Brown, Luka's a different level star. And in fact, Luka's a superstar. Jaylen Brown is a star. There's a difference there. But Trae Young, back to him, that was sensational. And now they're going to play Philadelphia in the second round because the Eastern Conference, they just flew by through the playoffs, right? You had
Yep.
a sweep in 3 5-game series. You only had 3 extra games than the minimum, and so we're all set for that. And now you got Philly against Atlanta. On the surface, you'd say Philadelphia, right? Because they're just a better team. But now you got to deal with what's going on with Joel Embiid's knee.
Yeah, that's going to be the story
Yeah.
of that series. Obviously, is if Joel Embiid is right, then Philadelphia should be able to take it
Mm-hmm.
to Atlanta, no problem. If he's not, it's going to be a lot more competitive of
Yeah.
a series. Obviously, Philadelphia has Ben Simmons, who is a wonderful defensive player, and I think most of the times a liability offensively, but he was pretty good last night. So he'll be checking Trae Young, I would imagine, a lot. So other guys on Atlanta are going to have to step up. Atlanta's a very good 3-point shooting
They are.
team. They have a couple of nice bigs in Capella and Collins. I like their roster. I really do like Atlanta's roster. I think they've done a good job building it out. And obviously they found
Bogdanovich is a drop dead 3-point shooter.
yeah, I think they
Danilo
found the
Gallinari had
right
a nice
coach for
series.
them too.
Oh man, 31-12 since he took over.
Lloyd
How's that?
Pierce not looking particularly good. I hear
No,
he's a leading contender for the Celtics job, but I mean, holy crap! How can you hire a guy after the team wasn't even in the playoffs when he left, and now they dominated in the first round?
shouldn't Atlanta get that tag interim head coach off of Nate McMillan's title?
Yeah,
Like,
they should
he's
name
the
him
head
president
coach.
of basketball operations.
Absolutely. I mean, if it doesn't work out in Atlanta, that should be your first phone call, is to bring that Nate McMillan to the Celtics. That's not going to happen, obviously. I mean, unless Atlanta's really screwed up, he's your coach going forward, because I've always liked Nate McMillan. Players respect him. He understands the defensive side of basketball because he was a dynamite defensive player. He's always had Indiana always in contention. They were never a team that could quite get over the top, but
And
they were always a
Portland was
pain to
good when
play.
he was the coach there
Portland was
too.
good there, and maybe if Terry Stotts is gone, I don't know if again they leave this interim tag on him. Maybe he goes to Portland. I'm sure Dame Lillard would love to see that, because I think if Portland loses tonight, that Stotts will be gone by
Yes.
tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, that the Atlanta Philadelphia series is going to be until we know more about Joel Embiid, it's virtually impossible to really
Right.
predict it. He has a small meniscus tear, but they're still listing him as day to day. I don't really know how those two things make sense. Like, I didn't even realize you could play through any sort of meniscus tear.
It's the meniscus tear, I guess, and from what I've heard, is
Dr.
it's kind of
Sapichetti, yes.
yeah, Dr. Sapichetti, because I know everything. Again, if you
Mhm.
just follow the Lakers, you get to learn about all the body parts because of Anthony Davis injuring them all at this point. The small meniscus tear, it's kind of a flap in the knee, so if you can play through that, but if the flap gets into certain areas, it can be very painful, and it's very, very tiny. So they're hoping it doesn't impede Joel Embiid. I think he's going to miss the first game and be ready for the second game. The thing is, Embiid, like Anthony Davis, gets hurt a lot. He's a huge guy. I mean, he's
Yeah.
7 feet, 300 pounds. He's just unstoppable. And he's also a guy who cuts to the basket, drives to the basket. He's not Shaq or Kareem, who would go down the court and set up in the low post, and that was his game. He's a little bit different than those guys. So, as is Anthony Davis, who isn't quite as big, but guys like that, they're prone to more injuries because they're in motion more. They're cutting to the basket. They're going to be in some uncompromising position. So I'm going to pick Philadelphia to win this series. Obviously, I'm expecting Embiid to be there for games 2 on, and I think that Ben Simmons will be a tough matchup for Trae Young. I mean, Trae Young is what, 6'2"? Ben Simmons is 6'10", and Ben Simmons is probably a better athlete than Trae Young. Ben Simmons is a freak. He's 6'10", 250, and he's got like the athleticism of close to the athleticism of Russell Westbrook. I mean, he can do a lot of things out there on the basketball court, except shoot, which is pretty important in the game. But I'm going to pick Philadelphia because I think they've got some other nice pieces. Tobias Harris has developed into a perfect number 3 guy on your
Yeah.
team, hasn't he? I mean, he's really good. And Danny Green's got that championship DNA. And Seth Curry at 30 last night,
He
like,
did.
outstanding. So I
Uh,
think Philly wins no matter what.
can they win without Embiid this series? I'm not
Yeah,
talking
they
about the whole
can.
thing.
I still think they can win without him. I do. I mean, now you're relying on Dwight Howard to play more minutes, and I don't think he's up to that. But and it could be a problem with Clint Capella, who's not a great offensive player, but he's a really good defender, rebounder, and a guy who you get the ball to at the rim. Embiid can impede that, obviously. I still think they can win. They got a home court advantage. And as much as I like this Atlanta roster, I think Philadelphia is still, enough better than them to win the series. It's
Yeah,
6 games in that
and
range.
Atlanta's still the young team. This is their
Yeah.
first taste of the playoffs. Philadelphia has been in the playoffs before, obviously. And like you said, Danny Green's won a couple titles, so they have guys who have the experience and they have home court advantage. Philadelphia, obviously, very very good at home, not so great on the road. Yeah, I'll take Philadelphia. I will say if Embiid plays, they'll win it in 5.
Hmm.
If he plays every game, if he doesn't play every game, I think they'll win it in 6.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to go with. I think they're still the better team.
All right, Sap. So that's what we got there. Just recapping the other games from last night, really quick. The Jazz end the Grizzlies season. They win that series 4-1, winning all 4 games that Donovan Mitchell plays in. Shows you how important he is to that team. He was tremendous last night. Rudy Gobert, very good. The Jazz are just a really deep, well-rounded team. Memphis, just like Atlanta, this was their first taste of the playoffs. Very young team. I think that they're up and coming. I think that they'll continue to improve as John Morant gets better and those other young players get better. But I'd say taking a game from the Jazz was a nice
Yeah.
and getting in via the play-in tournament mechanism. The nice season for the Grizzlies. They have nothing to hang their heads about.
No, somewhat similar to maybe the 2014-15 Celtics, who were the 8th seed and got swept by the Cavaliers, but it was still important that they got that type of run in against the eventual conference champions. I believe the average margin in those games was like 10, so the Celtics played them as competitively as they could, and then in the end they couldn't beat them. And I think you saw that with Memphis. They were in the games, and then at the end Utah, which again, Utah has a lot of things that could lead to a championship. You wouldn't think so, because if Donovan Mitchell's your best player, is that good enough to win a championship? Probably not. And we both love Donovan Mitchell, but he's a little bit below the real superstars in the league. But they defend the three and they shoot threes really well. And that is huge in today's NBA. And that could get them, going further. And they'll play the winner of the Clippers, Dallas, which the most ridiculous and unpredictable
Yep.
series I think I've ever seen, where the road team has won every game. Maybe Dallas will end that and wrap it up in 6. But Utah's impressive. Not the most exciting team to watch, but very efficient. Do you realize in the last 25 years, the Utah Jazz have the second most wins of any team in the NBA, behind only the San Antonio Spurs?
Yeah, they're just always good. I mean, they've been a well-run organization
Yeah.
since almost the onset. They've never been downright
No.
horrible.
No, since
You
the
know,
80s with
uh,
Stockton and Malone, really, the last 35 years, they've always been there.
yeah, I mean, they're just a really well-run team for a tiny market in a place
Yeah.
that cannot attract free agents. They draft well, they scout well, and they constantly have good head coaching.
Yeah.
Quinn Snyder's excellent. Obviously, the great Jerry Sloan
Yep.
was there forever, and was a fantastic coach. May he rest in peace.
He would have been one of your favorite players, Jerry Sloan. Jerry
Way
Sloan as
before
a
my
player,
time.
no, he would have loved him. You talk about tough, great defensive player. I mean, he was a football player essentially out there. They had a backcourt, the Bulls, in the late 60s and early 70s, with Jerry Sloan and Norm Van Leer. They were the two toughest guys in the league. You would have been a big Bulls fan if you had been around in the early 70s.
So yeah, the Jazz impressive, and like you said, they're going to take on the winner of this Mavericks Clippers series. That makes no sense. The Mavericks win that game in LA last night. Luka Doncic had 42 points and 14 assists. It was an excellent game. The Clippers had their chances late. The series makes no sense. No one can really make heads or tails of it.
No.
Do you want to even venture a prediction as to who's going to win that one, or want to save it until you actually have a game 7, or that looks like it's going to happen
Well,
because the home team
I'm not
can't
going
win
to be
games?
around. Remember now, tomorrow,
Oh,
you
that's
and Mike
right.
Mullen are doing the podcast. We're not doing much on the weekend. So the next time we do ours is
It'll be
Monday.
over.
By then, all of these series will be over. So I look, I'm pulling for Dallas, because it doesn't appear the Lakers are going to win the title. So now I want to make sure that other narratives don't happen to damage my guy LeBron. One of those narratives would be the Clippers winning the championship and Kawhi winning a third championship with 3 different teams and being the finals MVP with 3 different teams. I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see Durant, Kyrie, and Harden win a championship. That's why if the Lakers get bounced, I'm rooting for Milwaukee or Philadelphia to win the thing. I'll root for Utah and Phoenix or whoever else. I just don't want to see the Clippers and the Nets. I don't want to see that. Anything else I'll live with. I think that Dallas can wrap this thing up. It's just, is it a case where the Clippers players like playing in Dallas and the Dallas players like playing in LA?
I
Like, do
have
they
no
just
idea.
like those arenas? I can't figure it out. Like, it's bizarre, because normally your secondary players play better at home. In this case, those secondary players have played better on the road. Certainly Kawhi played better on the road. He's anything but a secondary player. Had a chance to tie it last night and airballed a 3. And
Yeah, that was
then
a
had,
terrible play. He shot it
what
with
was
7
that?
seconds left.
Yeah.
I don't know what Ty Lue drew up there, but it wasn't good.
And Rondo wasn't happy. He was in Kawhi Leonard's face, which, only Rondo could go to a team at the trade deadline. And 2 months later, he's in the face of the superstar. And the superstar is non-communicative in the case of Kawhi Leonard. So he probably wasn't even hearing what Rondo was saying. But I wouldn't put it past it, because I still respect the hell out of the Clippers, because you've got Kawhi, who we've seen what he's capable of doing. And Paul George is playing pretty well in this series. He hasn't been a disaster like he
He's
was
been fine.
last year. And they've got other guys like Rondo always would scare the hell out of me in a big situation, although it doesn't seem to be there this year for him. I'm rooting for Dallas. I want to see more of Luka. I think Luka against Utah would be kind of a fun series. It's just like a lot of fresh faces out there. Donovan Mitchell, he's been in the league for several years, but now he's getting a lot of attention. And I think the league wants Luka to be successful, partly because of his pigmentation. I'm not going to pull punches with that, even though he's not an American player. When people are being called baby bird, I mean, people want to see him succeed, and he is a
Well,
great player and great
I
to
think
watch.
I think he could do something similar to when LeBron made the finals the
Yeah,
first time. Is that that's what the sort of run I think the league is hoping for with
right.
Luka. If the Lakers get eliminated, we're going to talk about that in a second. I think they would really like to see Luka Doncic drag a kind of
Yeah,
mediocre to bad roster to the finals. I mean, if the Lakers go down, and again, we're going to talk about it in a second, I still have my doubts. I don't see any reason why Luka couldn't drag them to the final. I don't think
it,
there's any team. It's like there's no way the Mavs are beating them.
right. The
I
Mavs
don't
could
I don't
the
see that
Mavs
team.
if the Mavs win, they play Utah, they could beat Utah. I mean, right?
Yeah.
I mean that wouldn't be a shock. And then after that, they would, if the Lakers are gone, they'd be playing either Phoenix, Denver, or Portland. I mean, at that point, it's all wide open. That's why the Lakers do have an opportunity if they can get their act together. And now we're hoping Anthony Davis. He's probably not going to play in Game 6. Maybe if there's a Game 7, he plays. But how good is he going to be? He's dealing with a groin strain.
So
It's
you
not
don't
like
think he's
it's.
going to play tonight?
I don't. I
I
don't.
I do. I kind of do think
Okay.
he's going to play tonight.
Gonna be interesting. I mean, I hope you're right. I don't know how good he'll be, but maybe just his presence out there. I mean, he's not exactly blood and guts Anthony Davis. I mean, he's not Willis Reed, who's going to come out, hit his first 2 shots of the game while he can barely walk, and the crowd's going to erupt because the game's going to be in Phoenix. I mean, the Lakers better get off to some sort of start in this game because that crowd's going to be insane. They haven't been in the playoffs for over 10 years, and they're playing the Lakers. I mean, that's always been Phoenix hurdle is the Lakers, in
Yeah.
addition to San Antonio. But the Lakers are the Lakers, and the crowd's going to be nuts. So I mean, if he plays and he can give you 15 points, 10 rebounds, and is a good option, and maybe opens up the paint a little bit for LeBron, who's going to have to play the role of Derrick Henry at some point because every time he tries to go down the lane, they're packing the lane and they're forcing the outside shooters to shoot. And the Lakers are shooting less than 30% from three in this series, Jet. The only team out of the in the playoffs that shot worse from 3-point were the Washington Wizards, and that was with Russell Westbrook chucking up balls from three. I mean, you almost can take them out of the equation. That game's going to be tough. But yeah, I think the league would rather see Luka and Mark Cuban because he's a character as an owner rather than Utah, Phoenix. Although Chris Paul would be a nice story, but Chris Paul's more of a guy that basketball junkies appreciate. Right? Luka's like got massive appeal. Portland Dame is great. I think Nikola Jokic is going to be the MVP. But yeah, I would say if the Lakers are bounced, the league would like to see Dallas be taken on a run by Luka Doncic, and then probably lose in the finals to whoever comes out of the East.
Yeah, I think
But yeah,
they'd get smacked. I think it does have a lot of similar
it does. Yeah,
parallels to that
yeah,
LeBron first finals team where
yeah.
it's not a very good though somehow this roster is better than that sorry sack of a team LeBron
Oh my God,
dragged
that
to
was
the
terrible.
finals. That roster was so bad.
Wasn't
But
that
they also
terrible?
remember, and they beat a damn good Detroit Pistons team to
Yeah.
get to the I mean, I think LeBron had 30 straight points or something in that
30
game.
straight points,
It was
28 or 30 straight
insane.
points in Game
That's
5,
when
and
I
then they
became a
wrapped it up in
LeBron
Games.
fan, and then later he ruined it for me. But that was like
all by a
I
decision.
was like, holy
Who
crap!
is this guy?
This
Yeah,
this is ridiculous.
he's 22. He's 6'9". He's really not looking to score all that much, and he scores 28 straight points against which was a very, very good team. I mean, the
They
Pistons,
won the title 2 years prior, right?
yeah, and they still made the playoffs several more years. I mean, they had a good 5-6 year run there. The Pistons did in the early to mid 2000s.
You're like, how is he doing this?
Oh, it was a joke. And I mean, that was kind of like, holy crap, this guy just looks different than everyone else because there's just not any people of that size with that skill set, and he's going to have to turn back the clock maybe tonight. He's not going to score 28 straight points in a game. That's not the player he really is or is anymore. But that's going to be interesting. I know we want to also preview Milwaukee and Brooklyn because I really believe in that series, Jet. Right now, if you said you have to go to Vegas, forget the LeBron factor because you're a LeBron guy or whatever, and you don't like this team or don't like that team. I think the winner of Brooklyn Milwaukee will win the championship.
I agree.
I think that is the series because they look like the two best teams right now. Philadelphia is right there too, but the Embiid injury concerns me. And the way the Lakers are playing, I don't see anybody in the West that right now is up to speed with those three teams. And
No,
so
I
think Brooklyn,
I think you could make a case they're the three
yeah,
best teams.
they're the three best teams. Yeah.
And I think Brooklyn, Milwaukee are even a tier above Philadelphia, even with a
Yeah.
healthy Embiid.
Yeah.
I just like the way they're constructed. I know Philadelphia ended up being the 1 seed. Yeah, it's going to be an awesome series. I hope and I think. I've been all on Brooklyn for a couple months now, Sap. So you know where I'm going. I think they're going to win this series. I think they'll win it in 6. I'm not going to say Milwaukee has no chance. I don't think that that's the case. I think Milwaukee really needs to win the first game here. I think that that's massively important to them for their. I think they're playing with a lot of confidence. I think Brooklyn looks at it as we can drop a game, whatever, not a big deal. Milwaukee really needs to send the message early.
Got to at least split the 2 games in Brooklyn because Brooklyn does have home court advantage. Again, the advantage Milwaukee has is Milwaukee's really now become much better down the stretch of games because now they can go to Middleton or they can go to Drew Holiday. They don't have to go exclusively to Giannis because as great as Giannis is, down the stretch, you foul him, he's not going to hit all his free throws, and that's a
the
problem
only defense
for a
Brooklyn
team.
can play on him is foul him. They can't stop him.
Because
They have nobody who
he's
can stop him.
unstoppable. Yeah, I mean, if he's got a lane to the basket, then look out.
But
It's
Sap,
not
like the Heat had the personnel to slow him down last year. Brooklyn doesn't have that type of defensive personnel.
Not at all. And I think that here's the reason I think Milwaukee's going to win this series. If you can just get to the final 4 minutes of a game, now that's tough to pull off against Brooklyn because oftentimes then it's garbage time. But if you can get to the final 4 minutes, I don't think they close all that well. I think Milwaukee will close better. Now, it sounds strange to say that when you have Durant, Kyrie, and Harden, but they just haven't played together all that much. And you really need that chemistry down the stretch of games on both ends of the court. So I think if you can get it as a close game late, and this happened late in the regular season, Milwaukee beat Brooklyn twice in close games, but in those games, Harden wasn't playing. And obviously that's a big factor now. And Harden to me is the most important player on Brooklyn.
Yeah, I put Giannis on him. That's what I do. I let Durant do whatever the hell he's going to do.
Yeah.
There's no point.
And put maybe Middleton on Durant and then Drew Holiday on
Drew
Kyrie.
Holiday
That's a good matchup.
Kyrie.
He can.
As well as anybody, as well as anybody can.
He's gonna make you look foolish at some point. He will. I mean, just that the kid is that good. That to me is the championship right there. And I'm gonna go with Milwaukee because I before the playoffs I picked them. You were on Milwaukee a lot earlier than me. You said the pieces are starting to fit together. They added PJ Tucker, who we both like as a defender, a guy who can hit a corner three. Maybe PJ Tucker spends 10 minutes a game banging Durant around. I mean, they look like Laurel and Hardy if they're standing next to each other. He's got 60 pounds on him too, and Durant's a foot taller. I mean, it's going to look comical, PJ Tucker on Durant. It really looks like before and after, or Laurel and Hardy, or the number 10. And I will continue to make jokes till you laugh. But that's going to be an interesting matchup. I'm rooting for Milwaukee. Oh God, yeah. Because I'm
everybody in the world is, Sap, except for like the 10 Brooklyn fans.
I know. The other 4
Kyrie was saying after the Celtics series, Kyrie was saying, we're uniting the world on this championship run. Everybody come to us. Like, is he delusional? Nobody is rooting for that team. They're the least popular team in the NBA. Like, they're the villains.
Yeah.
Does he not recognize that?
They're less popular. They're more unpopular. Yeah, I'm trying to phrase this right. Than Golden State became, right? Durant was the common denominator with both teams, but you like Steph and Clay, right? I mean, you couldn't help but like Steph and Clay more than, say, Harden and Kyrie. Kyrie's ruined a couple of franchises on his way out the door, or at least damaged them. And Harden just got up and left Houston. He ate his way out of the city.
And everybody hates Durant.
And everybody hates Durant, which they hated him in Golden State, so that takes care of that. But who doesn't like Steph and Klay Thompson? Yeah, I mean,
but
you can have an issue with them as a player.
Isn't it? It's delusional. Did you hear what he said? He's like, we're uniting the world. What the hell is he talking about?
I don't know if he's uniting the 5 boroughs in New York. In Brooklyn, they're going to root for him. I'm sure a lot of people in New York are going to root against Brooklyn.
More people across the country are rooting for the Celtics in that series. Do you know how hard it is to get people to root for a Boston team?
I know. Although the Celtics do have a national following.
Especially, they do, but like
mostly 65-year-old white guys. But yeah, that's pretty much the demographic.
No one wants
Celtic
Brooklyn
fans
to win. No one wants Brooklyn.
No, Milwaukee hasn't been to the finals yet since 1971, and as a teenager in my early 20s, midway through high school into early college. That was my team, the Bucks. I was a huge Marcus Johnson and Sidney Moncrief fan. Marcus does the color commentary for the Bucks, so I'll be rooting for the Bucks.
Oh, I'm
If the
rooting.
Lakers get bumped, I'm rooting for the Bucks. I'm a Bucks fan once again. If the Lakers get knocked, in fact, I'm a Bucks fan till the finals because they both could happen where the Lakers play the Bucks in the finals, which I picked at the start of the postseason, but we'll see what happens.
I mean, I'm gonna pretend the Bucks are the Celtics. I'm gonna root my
Yeah,
ass off for them. I really am.
likable
I hope
team, right?
super likable. I like. There's not a player in their team that I dislike. I think that they have a chance.
Yeah.
I think they match up against Brooklyn the best of any
Yep.
team in the NBA. If any
Yep.
team is going to take down Brooklyn, it's going to be Milwaukee.
Yeah, I
So
think so
I
too.
really hope so. I hope so for Giannis. I hope so for the city of Milwaukee. I think it would be really cool. They have the personnel to at least make Brooklyn uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely, because they play defense and they're a physical team. They can play defense in the interior, although, obviously Brooklyn can beat you from outside as much as anything. I don't think James Harden's going to have excursions to the basket like he had against the Celtics. There'll be someone to defend him there. And I think, put Giannis on Harden. Look, whoever guards Harden's going to get exhausted, but Giannis appears to me to be like the
And those
best
two guys
conditioned
don't
guy in
like
the
each
league.
other. Remember,
They don't. And I think Giannis is a guy who is just so well conditioned. Like Russell Westbrook, Giannis, and Ben Simmons. To me, I just look at them and go, these guys look like they could run forever. I mean, they're all in their athletic prime. Westbrook maybe a little bit outside of that, but he's such a great athlete and competitor. Those guys look like they've got boundless energy, and that's what you need to
how many
derail
games, Sep?
James Harden. I'm going to go 7 because I don't think the home court's going to be as big. Like I could see Milwaukee going into Brooklyn and winning in 7. I just see that as a 7-game series because I think the teams are very, very evenly matched. Do you worry from Milwaukee that Dante DiVincenzo was out? Not a great player,
No.
but still a good role player. Okay. Because it's going to be more minutes for Pat Connaughton, who serves nicely coming off the bench, but now he's in the starting lineup. And DiVincenzo's a 10.6 rebound guy. Scrappy defender, can hit the 3. I mean, it doesn't help, but you're not too concerned with that.
Yeah, I think they can survive it, no problem.
Okay.
And he wasn't going to make or break this series. The margin of error is thin, but I don't think it's that thin that DiVincenzo was going to be tipping the balance there. So you have Milwaukee in 7, I have Brooklyn in 6. All right, Sap, 2 games tonight. Nuggets Trailblazers. The Nuggets are up 3-2 after an all-time double overtime game the other night. This game is in Portland. Just answer me this question. Do the Blazers extend this to a game 7, yes or no?
Yeah, Dame will go off again. Although the only thing is with Dame, I mean, how exhausted must he be? He has really no help here. CJ McCollum has regressed as a player. He's had some injuries. He's not what he was, say, 2-3 years ago. So there's more burden on Dame Lillard. I mean, he's counting on 37-year-old Carmelo Anthony to be his wingman. They just don't have enough, but I think he's so great. That crowd's going to be up to 10,000, I believe, for that game. I trust Dame Lillard. I think he's going to show up and have another huge game. I mean, look, he had a huge game in Denver and wasn't enough. Denver's the better team, but I don't like to bet against Dame Lillard. The zigzag says Portland will cover the very small line. The zigzag right now is 16-15 in the postseason, which is it's okay. So I think Portland will get this home. I do think the league needs some sort of game 7s, right? I mean, like, is every series going to be over in 6 or less?
We thought this was 7 from the beginning, so I'm not going to go
the closest
against
series. Yeah,
I'm not going to go against
Portland
it now.
Tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll agree. Portland's favored by 5 points. I'll take Portland with the 5.
-5.
I feel pretty comfortable with that. So hopefully that does go to 7 because it's been a fun series, really fun series.
Oh yeah, as expected.
And then Zap, we'll wrap up with your Lakers and the Suns tonight. Can I ask you a quick question? Why did LeBron leave with 5 minutes to go in last game?
To get early treatment.
Did 5 minutes of time make that much of a difference?
Oh, well, it's 5 minutes on the play clock, but that's probably about, we know NBA games, although it was a blowout, 15 minutes.
Yeah, did that make a big difference for his status tonight?
He's got a lot of injuries, ankle, shoulder, a lot of things going on.
Is that good leadership?
Well, if he sat on the bench, were they going to make a miraculous comeback? See, he can never win, right? So he didn't play all that well in the first half. So at some point in the third quarter, I would have just sat him and said, just get ready for game 6 because this game is over. Now he goes out in the third quarter of game 5 and gets 17 points. And all the people that hate him say, well, he's just padding his stats. Okay, well, he was playing. He scored 17 points in the quarter. If someone came along for the ride, maybe they make a miraculous comeback. Not likely, but no one else played well. But
Oh
he's
man,
padding
were
his
they
stats.
bad?
So, I mean, Dennis Schroeder's been horrible in this series. He's cost himself 20-30 million dollars, right? Because
Oof.
he rejected a 4-year $90 million offer from the Lakers. When he becomes a free agent, the Lakers aren't going to be interested in him. They'll move on to someone else. What's he going to get now? 4 years,
75.
64 million. Yeah, I mean, so he's cost himself a lot of money in this series. He's supposed to be their third best player. Now with AD out, he's supposed to be the second best player. No, it's not a good look for LeBron, and LeBron understands that. He knows he's the most scrutinized athlete in the world. I don't even think it's close. Tiger Woods was for a while, but Tiger's not
It
really
makes him look
playing
like
anymore.
what Skip Bayless says he is, which is a front runner, which is not what you want to be
No.
To appear to be.
Yeah, no, it was not a good look. And then of course you get James Worthy comes out, and look, I love James Worthy. I mean, talk about the perfect third guy on a team behind Kareem and Magic. That was pretty good. Worthy says it was the most, disturbing and the most disturbing, I forget what word he used, but along those lines, loss in Laker team history. Well, what about game 6 against the Celtics in 2008 when the Celtics won by 39? Kobe meddled in it at that point. Or I find worse, because I was at that game and I was rooting for the Lakers. The Lakers were up 2-1 at Boston Garden, and Worthy threw a pass to Gerald Henderson, which Henderson laid in and forced overtime, and the Lakers absolutely gagged in that series. They should have won that series, and Magic had a lot of really poor games. That was in game 2, actually. Game 4, after being up 2-1, Magic missed countless free throws. The Lakers blew like a double-digit lead, and the Celtics ended up. Those to me are more troubling. I mean, you get blown out, you get blown out. What do you expect the guys to do? Do you want LeBron to get a T sitting on the bench? No, not a good look. Not a good look whatsoever. But he's got to be frustrated because he can't do things he used to do, like last year or 3 years ago or 6 years ago, where he could just dominate. Maybe Father Time is tapping on the shoulder. Maybe this ankle injury is a lot worse and the conditioning isn't there. And look, my thing with the Lakers, if they're not going to make a championship run here, I'd prefer they just lose in the first round. And here's the reasoning behind this. So LeBron and Anthony Davis can get rehab started sooner to be ready for next year. And someone has to talk to Anthony Davis. And I think the candidate I would approach to do that is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem, among all the great things he did, maybe the most impressive thing is how damn durable he was. And he used to take a pounding. He was just better than everybody. He'd set up in the post. I mean, whether it was Bob Lanier or Dave Cowens, they would just hammer him. I mean, go back to the movie Airplane, where the little kid in the cockpit says, "Hey, you're Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. My dad says you're lazy and don't play hard." And Kareem turns around and says, "Well, tell your dad to go up and down the court dragging Lanier and Cowan's ass." Well, that was the case, because the only way to stop him was to just try to beat him up. The guy never missed games, because Kareem was one of the first athletes who he studied karate with Bruce Lee. He was into his nutrition. I remember going to a shoot around, I think it was in 84, 85. And Kareem had those bands that Brady talks about now. This was 35 years ago, the elastic bands.
Well, so you don't think AD is in good shape?
No. I think AD is Colin Cowherd compared AD a little bit to Ben Roethlisberger, in a sense of this naturally talented guy who's just great, who doesn't really.
Ben Roethlisberger's fat.
I know Anthony Davis isn't fat, but Anthony Davis, does it look to you like Anthony Davis spent the offseason conditioning? I mean, he kind of came into camp out of shape. Some of these injuries are conditioning issues, and you would hope LeBron would, rub off on Anthony Davis to realize that, especially as you get older, you got to take care of yourself. But if I'm the Lakers, I reach out to the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and say, if you can you maybe put a bug in the ear of Anthony Davis that, you can accomplish a lot here. You can win a championship or 2 or 3. You got to now take more seriously conditioning, nutrition, all of that stuff. So I think that's something that the Lakers are going to have to look to do in the offseason. And like I said, if they're going to get bounced in game 7, then lose tonight, get it over with. I don't want to go through this and have to sit through game 7. I mean, they could still win this series. Let me just throw this stat at you before you go on.
Yeah.
Since 2012, when LeBron has been trailing 3-2, he's played in 9 games.
I saw this.
36, 12, and 8. 36 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists, like 52% from the floor, 42 from 3. I mean, it's just like this
And
is
his
when he's at his
record's like
best.
8 and
8 and
1,
1.
right?
8 and
Yeah,
1. Yeah.
that's
So
insane.
that's insane. Now, I don't know if he can do that tonight, though. It's just, first of all, Phoenix is better than I thought. And also, they're just packing the lane and they're just saying, LeBron, we're not going to let you get to the basket. I don't know if he's really enthused about getting to the basket because he can't hit his goddamn free throws. He's averaging like 3.5 free throw attempts per game in this series. His career average in the
That's
postseason
shocking.
is 9. I mean, you would just think with a couple of superstar calls, he'd get to the free throw line. He's frightened at the line right now, as is Ben Simmons and Giannis. And I mean, these great players can't shoot free throws, but they're daring the outside shooters of the Lakers to shoot, and they're shooting less than 30% from 3. I've not quite figured out when the Lakers go big, and that would involve Anthony Davis playing, they should play big. And they did in games 2 and 3. They rolled out with Drummond, Anthony Davis, LeBron up front. That is a massive front line. And then they played big. But oftentimes they have a big lineup out there, and then they chuck up 3-pointers. I mean, so far in the postseason, Jet, 43% of LeBron's shots are 3-pointers. He's a decent 3-point shooter. He's not Steph Curry. Like, I want to see him. I've said this for years, and Grant Hill brought it up. Your guy Grant Hill brought it up the other night. I want to see LeBron in the post more and more as he gets older. He's such a great passer. He can pass out of the post a la Meadowlark Lemon. Magic, late in his career, worked out of the post, and that great passing
Yeah, I don't think he's
ability
willing to
is
do it.
enhanced. It's something he's a guy that's always adapted, right? I mean, he became a better 3-point shooter. I think his mid-range game got better. He's never had the drive to the basket, stop and pop game that Kobe and Michael had. He's too damn big to do that. You can't be 6'9", 260 and come to that sudden stop the way MJ or Kobe could. It's just too big. But I would like to see him more in the low post. He's a great low post player. He can use either hand. But he's going to have to put up 30, 10, and 10 tonight and just pray that his teammates hit some shots. The big stat to look at tonight is assists. If he's at 12, 13 assists, well, that means someone's making baskets. And it's going to come down to, does Dennis Schroeder play better than the other night? Hell yeah, I could have played better than that. So I'm not really that confident going into this game, other than LeBron has been obviously throughout his career a great player. But when down 3-2, it's almost like back against the wall is when he plays at his best. I just don't know if he has the physical ability right now. I think he can do it again in the next year, but as we speak now, I just don't think he's much more than 80% the player he has been in the past because of injuries. I don't think he's lost it. I think the injuries have kind of added up, and he's not all there. And I don't know how locked in he is right now to this.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
I'll tell you why, because, and again, I'm going way too long here, but he's always been, 0 dark 30 in the postseason. He's tweeting about awards that his vodka company or whatever tequila company won.
right.
Like, that's not LeBron. LeBron's usually a pretty focused guy. But
And
he can
isn't
also
that sort of the
multitask.
concern about why when he went to LA, he'd be like, well, there's a lot of things going on in LA
Yeah.
for his career that it would be
Yeah.
distracting. And I think people will point to the bubble and say, well, those were basically eliminated for him.
Yeah,
So
could be.
people are going to ding that bubble title, especially with the Heat getting taught and the Celtics getting easily tossed aside in the first round. If the Lakers lose in the first round here too, listen, the title's a title. He won it, but people aren't going to weigh it as heavy. They're not going to put it as heavily in the argument, especially if they don't get out of the first round this year.
Jet, after they won in the bubble, how many tweets did I see that LeBron really hasn't won a title? Ray Allen won him a title in 2013, and Kyrie won him one in 2016, and then there was the bubble, and then the first one he won, there was a call in the second. I mean, he is the most scrutinized athlete ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think
that's ridiculous.
I'm not a LeBron guy, and I think that's a load of crap.
And of course it is. In the bubble, again, a lot of teams just didn't want to be there. He was able to lead his team being there. But yeah, that could be right. I mean, you're in LA. There are distractions there, and he's got a lot of business interests. LeBron's not James Harden worrying about going to the strip club. He's got other things going on.
Right.
He's got a family. He's got his son playing basketball. He's got 2 other kids. Movies coming out soon. He's got this tequila company. I think he's a big investor in Blaze Pizza.
He's got
the shop. He's also got that media company, which employs 100. He's got a lot of stuff going on, and he's got good people around him. Rich Paul.
Yeah, he doesn't seem as locked in as he has in past years.
It doesn't seem as locked in. It just doesn't seem like, it could be 18 years he's maybe mentally fatigued. I mean,
No, hard to
Jordan
blame
ran
the
into
guy. I
this.
mean, really.
Michael ran into this, and Michael took those breaks. LeBron can't take a year off at his age and come back. Maybe he and Aaron Rodgers will take a year off together, and then they'll come back the following year,
Or maybe they
rested
swap.
and
Rodgers
refreshed.
plays for the Lakers. LeBron plays for the Packers.
I don't think that would work though, because Rodgers is 1% owner of the Bucks. Another reason I'll be rooting for the Bucks.
There you go. If he forces his way out of Green Bay, maybe he'll have to sell that percentage of the Bucks to be persona non grata in Wisconsin.
He's not polling well in Green Bay right now. He's not. I mean, I think the majority of fans, a majority being 51% or more, are like, yeah, let's move on from Aaron Rodgers. They think differently there. Like they don't suffer fools. If they think the guy doesn't want to be there, they just say, just move on. It's very talk about incestuous, that whole organization in that area. I mean, they just love that team. They're like, okay, just move on. Because again, the Packers don't have an owner, so no
Right.
one
If you're
really
not all in
calls
on the
shots.
Packers, then they don't want
Yeah,
you.
that's it. They'll tell you to leave the city. So it's not as if the fans are with Aaron Rodgers. Certainly the wide receivers are, because none of them showed up to minicamp, although it was optional.
Yeah, not a good situation there. But
No.
all right, so Sap, when we return on Monday, are the Lakers in the second round, or are they, well, I guess, doing their movie press junkets for LeBron and not playing basketball?
The latter. I don't think they're going to win the series, whether it's
Okay.
tonight or Saturday. I'm just being honest with you. And you know what? I'm also maybe trying to do reverse psychology, pick against them. Yeah, I mean, Skip Bayless does this, and he makes $8 million a year. So maybe that's going to be my new method to becoming rich, is to just reverse psychology. I think they're going to lose. I think Phoenix right now, especially with Anthony Davis not playing, is a better team. Because if you were to take the 4 best players on the floor with Anthony Davis out, 3 of them are Suns. And even though Chris Paul's injured, it appears he's getting closer to being healthy. And he's a guy who can kind of survive with not being at 100%, because he plays with his mind and his leadership. And Booker's been outstanding, and DeAndre Ayton has been outstanding. So yeah, I mean, all of a sudden you got Cameron Payne, looks like the second coming of Johnny Dawkins out there. I mean, he's played incredible. Those secondary players for Phoenix have stepped up. The Lakers guys have been nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I think the Lakers, I'm not going to back off of it. I still think they're going to win the series. I think Davis plays tonight. Even if he doesn't, I think the Lakers win the game.
Okay.
Because I've just seen LeBron do it too many times. That record put his back to the wall is outstanding. Incredible. And he may not be 100%, but I still think I just don't think that highly of this Suns team. I think they're a good team. Mm-hmm. I think that LeBron has the ability to, even without Anthony Davis, be able to beat them. If he wins tonight and they win tonight, I know the Game 7 is in Phoenix. Phoenix will be pissing their pants.
Oh yeah,
in a Game 7 against the Lakers and LeBron. So I'm still going to take the Lakers. I think that they'll win both of these games, and I still think they're a legitimate chance to win the title this year. I'm not going to back off it until they're out. I'm not.
Yeah, because if they get through this, they'll play the Portland or Denver. They can beat those teams, and then you hope Anthony Davis is back by then. But then there'll be some other body part that he injures. I mean, and again, I'm dead serious that in the offseason, someone's going to have to get in his head and say, Anthony, you're getting older now. You've had a lot of injuries throughout your career. You've got a chance here. You're playing with LeBron. You know he's committed. You've got to be committed as well with your body. And maybe Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the best person to use for that. But I still think, as I say that, I don't know if today's players are like even impressed with that. Like,
if you don't want him, trade him to the Celtics, Sap.
Yeah, for who?
You want Marcus Smart?
No, I want Jaylen Brown at the least. I prefer Jason Tatum. And we know what LeBron thinks of Jaylen Brown. He's high on him.
I'd do that. 1 for 1. You're considering it.
I'll talk to you Monday.
The Lakers would not consider that trade. There's no way in hell
Anthony Davis' ceiling is still high. I mean, Anthony Davis is phenomenal. We know that. I mean, Jason Tatum, that would be a discussion, but I don't think the Celtics are moving on.
No, the Celtics wouldn't consider that.
No, I mean, Tatum's 14 years old, and he's already doing some amazing things. He's got the little kid. How could you possibly trade Jason Tatum? Because that means you don't get to see Deuce anymore.
Yeah, they can't.
The world's cutest kid.
That's gonna do it. You are gone
I'm gone. All right.
on your way to the Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame, to
Yes.
protest Barry Bonds not being inducted yet.
Yes.
Good
I'm
luck
gonna
with your
storm.
protest.
Gonna storm the Hall of Fame with my Bonds jersey on. I'm gonna be painted in black and orange, and hopefully I don't get arrested.
I'm gonna send you a request for maybe I gotta get a selfie with you and some Hall of Fame plaque. I'll pick which one I want for you to take a picture with.
I'm trying to think who your favorite player would
I
be.
I was told you I was there when Kirby Puckett got inducted, so maybe the Kirby Puckett one.
Okay, yeah. Oh, you were there when Kirby Puckett got inducted. Wow,
Yeah,
that
I
was
just
my
happened to be there.
nephew's favorite player, Kirby Puckett. Growing up, he loved Kirby Puckett. Guy got to get him to meet
All-time
Kirby
name.
Puckett. Oh yeah, I mean, and what makes baseball great is a guy that's essentially what was 5'8", 230 pounds, was
Yeah, with a
a
gut.
phenomenal player with a gut. Yeah, I mean, he was great. I mean, he's jumping over fences. I mean, baseball is great for that. You generally the players come in all shapes and sizes. Basketball, you're not going to look at a player and go, "How the hell is that guy really that good?" You kind of look at him and go, "Wow, that guy's pretty
Except for Nikola
spectacular."
Jokic, although he is 7 feet
Yeah,
tall.
that's true about him. He looks like he couldn't lift a cup of coffee or jump over the Sunday newspaper.
But yeah, well, all right, Sap. Well, enjoy your little vacation,
you.
and we will be back. You'll be back on Monday,
Yep.
and we'll see what the second round's looking like as the playoffs
Okay.
continue to march on, and we'll see if the Celtics do anything else stupid. Probably is my guess. All right, we are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. We will tweet out the links for the show, like always, at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer. Check out the YouTube, youtube.com/Jet Stryer. See you, everybody.